The river on Lunaris Prime was loud that night. Heavy rain fell from the dark sky, and the trees bent under the weight of the wind. The forest was usually quiet after sunset, but tonight, everything was alive. The rustling leaves, the sound of water crashing against the rocks, the distant rumble of thunder. Leora walked quickly along the narrow path near the riverbank. She was a young botanist who lived alone in a small wooden cabin on the edge of the forest. She liked quiet places. While most humans in the colony lived in the big cities, Leora chose a peaceful life among trees, flowers, and wild rivers. She carried a small lantern, its soft light cutting through the mist. She had gone out that evening to collect a few glowing plants that only bloomed during storms. They were rare, and their petals were used to make healing medicine. But as she walked back toward her cabin, she suddenly froze. Somewhere through the roar of the water, she heard something else. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A cry. It was soft, but clear enough to reach her ears. Leora turned her head, holding her breath. She thought at first it might be the wind, but then she heard it again, a sharp, short cry of fear. It came from down the river. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound. Mud splashed around her boots. The rain soaked her hair, and the lantern swung wildly in her hand. When she reached the edge of the river, her heart jumped. A small creature was struggling in the water. It was no ordinary animal. Its fur was golden, glowing faintly even in the storm. Its ears were pointed, its tail thick and bushy like a wolf's. But it was smaller, younger, a pup. The river was dragging it toward the deeper waters. Leora didn't stop to think. She threw down her bag and lantern and stepped into the freezing current. The water pushed hard against her legs, but she kept going. The pup cried out again, its head dipping under the waves. She reached forward, fighting the pull of the river, and finally caught the little creature by its scruff. It trembled in her hands, weak and frightened. Carefully, Leora lifted it against her chest and turned back. Each step was harder than the last, but she didn't give up. By the time she reached the shore, her clothes were soaked through and her legs shook with exhaustion. The pup lay in her arms, shivering. Its golden eyes fluttered open, locking on hers for a moment. It made a soft sound, and not a growl, not a bark, but something gentle. Leora wrapped it in her scarf to keep it warm. "Don't worry," she whispered softly. "You're safe now." She carried the pup to her cabin. The storm grew louder outside as she lit the fire and placed the small creature on a soft blanket. She dried its fur carefully with a towel and gave it warm water to drink. Slowly, the pup stopped shaking. It curled up on the blanket, its ears twitching softly. Leora sat beside it, still catching her breath. She had seen creatures like this before, but only from far away. This was no wild animal. This was an alpha pup, a child of the lupine alien race that lived side by side with humans on Lunaris Prime. They were powerful beings. Taller, stronger, faster than humans, with a strict code of honor. Their king, the Alpha King, ruled their people with firm justice. Alpha pups were rarely seen outside their royal territory. "What were you doing out there, little one?" she asked softly. Of course, the pup didn't answer. It only pressed its tiny head into the blanket and sighed. Outside, thunder rolled again. Leora stayed up late, making sure the pup was warm and safe. She didn't know why she cared so much. Maybe because she knew what it was like to be alone. She had come to Lunaris Prime as a child, an orphan, and had learned to depend on herself. Saving others was something she did naturally, without expecting anything in return. Morning came slowly. The rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds. Birds sang in the wet branches outside her cabin. When Leora opened her eyes, the golden pup was gone from the blanket. She sat up quickly. Her heart raced. "Where did you go?" Before she could get up, a strange hum filled the air. She stepped outside and froze. A massive silver ship hovered just above the clearing near her cabin. Its surface was covered with symbols glowing blue. Several tall figures jumped down from the ramp. Their armor shone in the morning light and their movements were sharp and precise. Alphas. She recognized them instantly. Their broad shoulders, tall frames, and wolf-like features were unmistakable. At the center of the group stood one figure taller than the rest, wearing a dark silver cloak that flowed like water. His golden eyes scanned the forest with a power that made the air feel heavier. The Alpha King. Leora's heart pounded. She wanted to hide, but she couldn't move. The pup ran toward him, yipping happily. The king knelt down, scooping the pup into his arms with surprising gentleness. Then he looked up and straight at her, their eyes met. For a long, tense moment, the forest was silent. Then one of the guards stepped forward. "You," the guard said in a deep, calm voice. "Are you the one who saved the royal heir?" "Royal heir?" Leora repeated, confused. The king stood slowly, the pup resting easily against his chest. Even from a distance, his presence was strong, almost overwhelming. He walked toward her, each step silent on the wet ground. When he stopped a few feet away, she had to tilt her head back to look at him properly. The guard spoke again. "That pup is the son of the Alpha King. He was taken during the storm. You returned him." Leora felt her breath catch. The Alpha King's pup? She had no idea. She looked at the small creature now curled in the king's strong arms. It blinked at her with warm golden eyes, as if it remembered the safety of her cabin. The king's gaze softened slightly. "You pulled my heir from the river," he said. His voice was deep and steady like a mountain. "You did not run. You did not ask for reward. You acted." Leora opened her mouth, but no words came. I just wanted to help," she finally managed. The king stepped closer. "Among my people," he said, "to save the life of the royal heir is a sacred act. It binds lives together." She didn't fully understand, but the way the guard straightened at his words told her this was serious. The pup made a small happy sound and stretched its paw toward her. The king glanced at his child, then back at her. "You have done more than help," he continued. "You have touched the blood of the Alpha line. For that you cannot remain unknown." Leora swallowed. She had never asked for attention. She liked her quiet forest life. But this was something far bigger than her. She saw it in the king's eyes. The decision had already been made. He raised his head. His voice carried like thunder through the clearing. "From this day forward, this woman is under the protection of the Alpha King. She has saved the heir. Her name will be remembered." The guards repeated his words in their language, their voices echoing through the forest. Leora's knees felt weak. Everything had changed in a heartbeat. The king turned to her again. "You will come with us," her heart jumped. "What? Wait, I can't." But the pup wiggled in his arms, leapt down, and ran straight to her, circling her feet with joy. The king watched the scene, his expression unreadable. It was clear the young heir had chosen her too. "You have my child's trust," the king said. "That is rare. It cannot be ignored." Leora looked at the ship, at the royal guards, at the pup looking up at her as if she was part of its world now. She wanted to say no, but deep inside she knew she couldn't walk away from this. The king extended his hand, not as a demand, but as something almost like a promise. "Come," he said simply. "Your courage will not be forgotten." She hesitated, then slowly placed her hand in his. His hand was warm, steady, and strong. The guards bowed their heads in respect, and the pup barked softly as if celebrating. As the ship lifted off the ground, Leora stood near the window, watching the forest grow smaller below. Her heart was full of questions, fear, and something else she couldn't name. She had saved a pup. That was all she had done. But now she was being carried to the royal citadel, to a world she had only heard about in stories. The Alpha King stood a few steps away, the golden pup asleep in his arms. His eyes met hers again, calm, steady, and sure. She didn't know what awaited her. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same. The stars began to shine through the clearing sky as the ship moved toward the horizon. The royal citadel of the Alpha race was unlike anything Leora had ever seen. From the moment the ship broke through the clouds, her breath caught in her throat. The citadel sat high on a mountain, surrounded by silver towers and shimmering bridges. Tall crystal spires rose into the blue sky, glowing softly in the sunlight. Below, wide stone roads curved like rivers, filled with alphas moving with purpose. It was a world of power and old traditions. Leora stood by the window of the royal ship as it descended slowly. The golden pup, the royal heir, pressed against her legs, wagging its tail happily. It had grown attached to her during the journey. She still didn't understand why the king wanted her here, but the pup's trust made the strange new world feel a little less frightening. When the ship landed, a large group of alphas stood waiting. They were dressed in elegant robes and armor, their posture straight and proud. The king stepped down first, the pup in his arms. His guards followed, their movements precise and silent. When Leora stepped out behind them, soft murmurs spread through the crowd. Many alphas looked at her with surprise. She was human, small compared to their tall wolf-like forms. She felt their eyes on her, curious and questioning. The king ignored the whispers. He walked through the long stone hall and everyone bowed their heads. Leora followed closely, clutching her hands nervously. The pup trotted beside her like a loyal shadow. Finally, they reached a large hall with a throne made of black stone and silver. It was wide and tall, with blue light shining through the ceiling. The council of elders sat in a circle near the throne. Their eyes were sharp, filled with experience and authority. The king sat on the throne with quiet strength. The pup climbed onto his lap and yawned. One of the elders, a tall woman with silver fur streaked with white, stood up. "King Alaric," she said, her voice deep and calm, "we have heard the news. A human saved your heir. It is a rare event," the king nodded. "Yes, she risked her life with no expectation of reward." Another elder leaned forward. "And now you bring her here, to the heart of the Alpha Citadel. What are your intentions, my king?" The hall grew silent. Leora held her breath. She didn't understand every custom, but she knew this moment mattered. The king stood slowly, the pup still in his arms. His golden eyes burned with calm fire. "She saved my son," he said, "and she has his trust. Such a bond cannot be ignored. It is not chance. It is destiny." The words echoed through the hall. Some elders exchanged glances. Others looked surprised. One whispered something softly, and the sound spread like ripples in water. "She is human," one elder said carefully. "She does not know our ways. To claim her would break tradition." The king's gaze sharpened slightly. "Tradition is not meant to be a cage. It is meant to be a guide. And my decision is clear." Leora's heart raced. Claim her. She didn't fully understand what that meant. She stepped forward slightly, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I just wanted to save him." The elders turned their eyes to her. Some looked at her with kindness, others with doubt. The king watched her, his expression unreadable. "I know," he said calmly. "And that is why your action carries more weight. A hero does not choose their moment. The moment chooses them." She didn't know how to reply. She felt both small and strangely strong standing in that grand hall. The eldest of the council rose. His fur was white as snow, and his golden eyes had seen many years. "The bond between savior and heir is sacred," he said. "If the heir chooses the savior, tradition gives them a place among us. But the decision must be mutual. The king may claim, but the human must also accept." A hush fell over the room. The king looked down at his pup, who had wriggled free and run to Leora, pressing against her leg. The little creature looked up at her with soft eyes as if asking her to stay. Alaric, the Alpha King, turned back to the elders. "My heir has chosen." Now all eyes turned to Leora. She stood alone, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of Alpha history on her shoulders. She didn't want to give up her freedom, but she also didn't want to turn away from the trust the pup had placed in her. And then there was the king himself, strong, steady, silent. There was no force in his words, only certainty. The elder nodded slowly. "Then it is her choice now." That night, Leora walked through the gardens of the citadel. The air was cool and glowing flowers lit the path. The pup walked beside her, sniffing at everything. She sat on a stone bench and looked at the stars. When she closed her eyes, she could still feel the river's cold water, hear the storm, see the pup's frightened eyes. She had acted without thinking, and that action had brought her here. She didn't hear Alaric's footsteps until he was close. He didn't wear armor now, only a long black cloak. His presence was quiet but strong, like the night wind. "You are far from your forest," he said. She nodded. "Yes, you are not comfortable." She gave a small laugh. "How could I be? Everything here is big, powerful, important, and I'm just me." Alaric sat on the other end of the bench. He didn't look at her right away. "Power does not come from size," he said. "It comes from the choices we make." She looked at him carefully. His face was strong, but there was a softness in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. He wasn't just a king. He was a father who had almost lost his child. "I didn't mean to get involved in royal matters," she said softly. "I only wanted to help." "And yet," Alaric said, "you saved a life. In my world, that means everything. My people honor courage. We do not forget it." The pup climbed onto the bench and curled between them. It rested its head on her knee. She gently stroked its golden fur. The king watched this quietly. "Leora," he said finally, "if you wish to return to your life in the forest, I will not stop you. You will be honored forever among my people, but if you stay, He paused. You will stand beside me as mate. Not as a prisoner, but as a queen. My people will follow you. My son will grow with your kindness. And this world will be partly yours. She turned to him, surprised by the calm in his voice. There was no command in it. Only truth. Why me? She whispered. Because courage is not something we choose, he said. It chooses us. You showed it when no one was watching. Her chest felt tight. She had always lived alone, far from big decisions. She never thought she would stand in front of a king, being offered a place beside him. But when she looked at the pup, at Alaric, at the stars shining over the citadel, she felt something stir inside her. Not fear, but quiet strength. The next day, the great ceremony began. The citadel was filled with the sound of horns and songs. Alpha warriors stood tall in silver armor, and elders wore their ceremonial robes. A long path of white stone led to the center of the courtyard, where a glowing blue circle marked the place of vows. Leora walked slowly along the path, wearing a simple white dress the royal handmaidens had given her. The pup trotted proudly at her side, its tail high. She was nervous, but there was a new steadiness in her heart. The king waited at the end of the path. He stood straight, dressed in dark silver robes. When she approached, the crowd fell silent. The elders stepped forward. The eldest elder raised his staff. Leora of the human colony, he said, you saved the heir of the Alpha King. His life is tied to yours. Do you choose to walk beside him not in chains, but as equal in courage and honor? Leora looked at Alaric. His golden eyes met hers with quiet strength. There was no pressure, only a promise. She took a deep breath. Yes, she said clearly. I choose. The crowd murmured in surprise, then in approval. The elder turned to the king. Alaric, Alpha King, do you accept her as your maid and queen? I do, Alaric said simply. The pup barked joyfully, breaking the tension. Laughter spread through the crowd. The elder lifted his staff high, then let the bond be honored. Blue light filled the courtyard. The Alpha people raised their heads to the sky and howled together, not in anger, but in celebration. The sound echoed through the mountains like music. Alaric stepped forward, offering his hand to Leora. She took it, her heart calm. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. That night, the citadel celebrated. Lanterns floated into the air, lighting up the night sky. Music filled the halls, and people danced under the stars. Leora stood on the balcony beside Alaric, the pup curled in her arms. Below them, their people cheered. This is only the beginning, Alaric said quietly. Our worlds will walk together now. Leora smiled. She didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. She had saved a life, and in doing so she had found her own place in the stars. The wind blew gently through her hair as the crowd howled again. Beside her, the king stood proud and steady, and in her arms the little golden pup slept peacefully, knowing it was safe.